Hello. Today we are going to do an interview with Wilma Lovings. Wilma Lovings is the principal here at Westcreek, and I'm going to let her share some of her educational and leadership background.
Okay, Miss Lockridge. I spent 12 years as a teacher for Arlington ISD, and then I came to Fort Worth to be administrator. I spent 2 years as an assistant principal, and currently I have been the principal here at Westcreek for the last 13 years.
Doing an awesome job, might I add. Well, I have some questions for you today, if you wouldn't mind helping me answer them. And I know you have a lot of good insight. So, we're just going to start with question number one. When thinking of curriculum design, do you agree that teachers must think a great deal first about the specific learning sought and the evidence of such learnings before thinking about what we, as the teacher, will do or provide in teaching and learning activities to enhance student understanding?
Well, I think as a teacher, you first must look at the big picture of what you want the students to learn. And from that, you go to the standard. And from the standard, you are looking at those nouns and those verbs. What is it that I want my student to learn for that particular skill or that particular concept?
Mm-hmm.
You can't plan your activities until you understand what you are required to teach them. And I think a teacher needs to study, plan first, making sure that they understand what is required of them as an educator to teach our kids. From that, I noticed that when I come into your classroom, you have that question of the week, which goes back to the standards. And I think once you have taught the standards and you've guided the students through the lessons and you've done the guided practice as well, and then you have given them independent work or group work to work on, and then you come back and you're checking for that understanding, which you're going to have to check for understanding every 15 minutes, because if you don't, you're going to lose some of the kids along the way.
Right.
There are some that can get it once you give it one time, but you need to check for understanding along the way. And I think if you do that and you plan activities that will help them to go from the concrete to the abstract, I think it will be more responsive. The activities should be based around your TEKS, or the activities should be based around those things that you want them to know. You know, many times we start out with the KWL. What do they already know? You should always find out what they already know.
Right.
Then what do I want them to know, and what do I want them to learn? And then I think if you tie all that in together, use those formative assessment tools, check for understanding, and then check at the end, ask yourself that question again that you started out with. Did the kids grasp what you want them to learn? I think you'll be more effective as a teacher, and their understanding, they will comprehend what you want them to know.
Okay. Thank you so much for that answer. How do you distinguish between desired knowledge and understanding?
I kind of think they kind of go along together. Knowledge is really facts or information or skills someone has acquired through their experience or their education. It's something they have comprehended over the time, and then understanding is comprehension. And so I think they kind of tie in together.
Right.
Knowledge is acquired over a period of time through education or your personal experience, and then understanding is comprehension too. So they kind of tie in together.
Right. What I gained from the Understanding by Design book was when they talked about that knowledge and understanding, I like that they brought in Bloom's taxonomy, which we're very familiar with. The first level, they have to get that knowledge, and then it goes up into deeper understanding. So it kind of helped me see what they were, talking about when they went from knowledge to understanding. I'm really glad they painted that picture for me. And they do go hand in hand too. I think you have to have that knowledge, those basic skills that'll take you to a deeper understanding.
And along with that, what you were talking about, the understanding by design, understanding is making meaning of what you have already learned, or those facts you have already learned, which is what knowledge is, acquiring things through experience. And so it can't go, that's how you distinguish. The understanding is making the meaning.
Okay. Question number 3. If understanding is about making meaning of facts and transferring knowledge to other problems, tasks, and domains, what does such understanding look like?
I think understanding look like, many times we say we're teaching a skill or concept or standard to mastery. If I cannot take my knowledge and transfer it to another skill or situation, then I haven't, and make understanding, get meaning from that, then I think that will, whenever I can apply it to something else,
right? Okay.
Then and it becomes meaningful to me. I can apply it and I can use it within I can relate to it. Then I think, or transfer it to another skill or concept that I'm trying to learn, then I think I've made meaning of that, and then I have grasped that understanding of maybe you didn't teach me that, but through your teaching and through your scaffolding, like you brought up Bloom's, you starting out with the basic knowledge, and then you're going up, to apply and into synthesis and all that. I think if I have truly learned something and mastered it, I'm going to scaffold upward and apply it in another situation.
And I love that word that you're using, mastery. When I can definitely see that. When I notice a student has mastered a skill, it's not just in this isolated area. They can take it to other areas. So I like that you use that word mastery. That really helps, put the icing on the top of it for me. Some have heard that the Understanding by Design framework de-emphasizes the teaching of content, knowledge, and skill to focus on more general understanding. Is this your recommendation?
I think now in education, when I first started out, it was the teacher doing the teaching. But I've noticed, as being an administrator in years down the road of my years, I've noticed that the emphasis has come on the kids taking on the learning process, them and the teacher becoming more of a facilitator, of the kids learning, and the kids taking ownership of their own learning. And if you can teach a kid a skill or concept where they can think critically, because if they cannot think and question what they need to do of their own work, and you add that into something that's reasonable, they know what reasonable is, and that comprehension and that fluency, and you add that rigor to it, because we were years ago when y'all were teachers, I kept hearing different one of your coworkers saying, the kids just don't think. The kids just don't reason, And then I asked myself as a leader, have I required of them, have we as a staff talked about how can we help kids think critically, and how can we help kids reason? Because if we haven't taught kids how to question their own learning and question their own world and to make meaning of what it is that they need to learn, then we haven't done our jobs as education. And if it don't make sense, let's teach them those skills for thinking critically, as well as problem solving, as well as reasoning through the life. If something just don't make sense, why would you put that down, or why would you write that? Right. And if you don't add the rigor to it, because we're not going to be able to compete globally with the world. When we're being here in Texas, I just can't teach students skills just for Texas. I got to teach them skills where they can complete globally, because I may not go to school in Texas. My peers that I go off to college with may be up north somewhere. but have my teachers here in Texas prepared me to compete with the students in another state, via compete at a corporation in another state. I have to be able to think. I have to be able to work with people. That's why we go cooperative learning. That's why we do small groups, because I need you to bounce off your thoughts off of me, and we work together to get our thought process and our problem solving to solve these problems, or to go back to that text evidence and find those and have those discussions with each other. I don't know if I answered your question, but I just had to say that, Ms. Lockridge.
Well, I enjoyed that, and I totally agree. We're going to go on to question number 5. Our national and state tests use primarily multiple choice and brief constructed response items that do not assess for deep understanding in the way that Understanding by Design recommends. How can we prepare our students for these high-stakes standardized tests?
I guess I just kind of hit on that when I said they have to compete globally.
Right.
One of the things we did, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, we wanted to make our kids think critically as well as reason through their learning and comprehend and add that rigor. So we took, as a staff, a couple of field trips to other schools that were performing very high. And one of the things we found as we were looking at their products and looking at their student work, once they taught a skill or a concept, at the end of it, they had the kids write a paragraph of what they've learned. And so they had to justify their thinking, or when they answered their questions as we were touring through some of the classes and they were engaged in a discussion. If a kid gave a response to a question that the teacher had asked, we didn't say, no, that was wrong. We said, justify your answer, explain. So we start having kids write to explain or justify your answer. And I can't discount your answer. You may just have a different perspective. And so if this kid can justify their answer of why they want that response, or in another justify, that gives them different perspectives, because not always is there one right answer. But I do know when you come down to multiple choice questions, they have one answer. But what kids need to be able to do is reason. What is the best possible choice? Because all of them could lead toward that, but they have to be able to reason and be able to think, what is the best possible answer for this particular question? And so I think if you let them, during discussions within your classroom, have that back and forth engagement of discussions, and as a teacher, we become more a facilitator for the kids. They will learn to, like we said, transfer those skills that they've learned previously and justify their answer for whatever they need to be able to discern between this particular answer choice and that particular answer choice and this particular answer choice, because usually there are about 3 or 4 in this one, but maybe A, C, and D may be a possible choice. I can rule out B because it's not even in the ballpark. But then I get down to 2 last choices. But which one is the best possible choice? That critical thinking, that reasonableness, and I'm going back to that text evidence, that's going to help me pick that out if I'm doing something for reading. But if it's something for math, if I've taught those kids how to go through the process of problem solving, and then I rule out, is this answer reasonable, whether it be for multiplication, division, addition, or subtraction. But if I've given them those tools and they mastered those skills, because I've done those standards and checked for that understanding through formative assessments, they're going to have those tools to critically think and to rule out any answers that wouldn't be the best answer for that particular standardized task question.
And just to piggyback off of what you said, when you're explaining this, I'm thinking about when I moved to Texas because I'm originally from Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
So I come here and I had my certification in another state, so I had to take the Texas state certification test. And I get to a question, and it was a generalist question, and they're asking me about Texas history.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, I really don't have a basis, or I don't know Texas history that well because, I did Ohio history.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions was, why was one of these cities, began, or why did they form this city in this place? And I had to rule out. I had to do that reasonableness. And even though I really didn't know between which cities were what, I know now since I've been here so long, but I just knew Fort Worth. I didn't know which cities were what. But one of the answers said that it was because it was by a river or by water. Mm-hmm. And just, having that understanding that most cities do form around water, even though I didn't know Texas history, it helped me choose the right answer. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad because, I'm still teaching because I wouldn't have been able to pass that test if I wouldn't have had that understanding. And that is what we try to teach our students. Mm-hmm. And it does help in so many different areas. You might not know the answer every time, but you can rule out the ones that don't make sense and come to an answer that, uses all of that reasonableness and critical thinking. Mm-hmm. All right, number 6. How important are textbooks in the implementation of understanding by design?
They're important to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. As the years progress. They are research-based. They are based, many of them are based around the standards, the TEKS, and they give a basis of the overall history from someone's perspective, mm-hmm. hopefully from a broader perspective than one person or group of people within an isolated region. And so textbooks are important for design in that they do have many of them have the core mm-hmm. curriculum that we need to know. But as we have come to find out in these latter years, there's so much internet mm-hmm. and via internet that the kids can access, and there's so many tools that they can access. This phone here, we had the discussion about, do you let kids use digital components, or do you let them use this iPad to mm-hmm. research? Mm-hmm. Well, these are tools too. Right. And as we've come into, our kids are digital now.
Right.
And, and textbooks are, on paper, and, they're very important because they carry our history textbooks, but this is a faster tool for me to access what I want to know. If I needed to know something, all I do is type it in. Mm-hmm. If I had a textbook, they are important, but if I have a textbook, I got to go back and flip. I can type in my subject here mm-hmm. via answer. Right. Or via perspectives, multiple perspectives. But if I want to keep a living document, mm-hmm. textbooks are important. But yes, they do go out of, they sometimes become dated. Right. But they are important components. Mm-hmm. And we continue to order textbooks from day to day. Mm-hmm. I think a child do need textbooks in some cases.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But also think that we need to use the internet to supplement those textbooks and to see the other perspective. Yes, it has one perspective, but they need to more updated, because textbooks are several years behind mm-hmm. in history.
Right. That's true. And I think about my educational career, just elementary mm-hmm. school, and I know we would start at chapter 1 mm-hmm. and go all the way through the chapter. And I know as a teacher, yes, we're in the textbooks, but a lot of times we pull a lot of resources, mm-hmm. Pull them in as needed, because mm-hmm. we have students that are on different levels, or, mm-hmm. You have to use different resources mm-hmm. to add to it. But, I feel like that textbook does give you the basis of, it gives you a guide. And, sometimes you have to veer from it, but I do think they are definitely important.
Can I add something to
Yes.
that? And I know the question that asks how important are textbooks in the implementation or understanding by design. So many of our kids now, like I said, are digital and they are visual. A textbook is visual in that it has a lot of print and it has those captions and it has some pictures and things like that. It's important that a kid need to know that I can go to this resource and get some of my learning out of it. I may not have these tools or this or this, but I can take that textbook home, look in it like this. I can look in here and I can refer back to this. Even when I don't have internet service, I can go back to this resource and find out what I need to know or as a basis of what I need to know. So textbooks do help with our understanding.
Right.
Because for some people, that's their only tool that they have. That's the only thing they can take home for their homework or their classwork or, and some schools aren't able to buy computer things for their kids. So a textbook is something that we're given by the state and taxpayers pay for it. So we are thankful for our textbooks.
Yes, ma'am. Number 7. Some educators have questioned the use of understanding by design framework in mathematics and other skill-focused areas. Is the understanding by design framework appropriate for mathematics? And I ask a lot of questions about mathematics since I don't teach it. So I just want to stay current in the math world.
Like we were sharing earlier that we talked about how understanding was making meaning of facts, and that mathematics deals with abundance of facts, but it also deals with the process. And so if you look at it that the understanding by design framework is appropriate for mathematics, and if we're making meaning, design by framework would be appropriate for mathematics because it would be a process in which the students would be carried through.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. We're to our last question, which is a scenario. And this scenario comes from the second book, Integrating Differentiated Instruction. And for me, I know a lot of people say a picture's worth 1,000 words. A lot of times for me and my understanding, a scenario is worth 1,000 words. It just paints a clear picture for me. So I'm going to read the scenario.
Okay.
4 students in a teacher's class lack past math skills necessary to become confident with current operations. 3 students already demonstrate mastery of the outcomes specified for the end of the unit. The teacher finds several times in the week to work intensely with the struggling students to help them become proficient with the precursor understandings and skills. She also uses some alternate homework assignments for these students so they have the opportunity to patch the holes in their mathematical understanding. At the same time, she works closely with them to ensure that they are developing foundational understanding of the newly introduced concepts, understandings, and skills so that they do not continue to fall behind. The teacher also meets with the students who are advanced. They are completing a longer-term assignment that calls on them to combine various facets of mathematical understanding and even invent new ideas to solve a complex multi-step problem. At any point in the unit, when these students demonstrate competence with outcomes, the long-term assignment replaces assignments that will rehearse what they already know, and it calls on them to extend their reach mathematically rather than waiting or marching in place. What are your thoughts on this teacher's approach to differentiated instruction?
I agree with the teacher's differentiated approach because when I went through school, and I don't know about you, they used to just, everybody had to stay in the same place.
Right.
But now, as we evolved and engage kids in learning, we had that conversation about equity in learning and differentiation in learning.
Right.
If I am a struggling student, I'm going to need more time, and I need you to slow it down so that I will, first of all, get those foundational skills and fill in those readiness and those supporting things that I need. But if I am a student that have mastered those or have grasped the skills and concepts a little bit faster than my peer, it's not fair for you to hold me back.
Right.
In my learning. So we have to scaffold learning because we have so many kids nowadays who we have in class. You could just take your own classroom. You have this kid that is performing at gifted level or able learner, or they are top 10% of their class. They can do this, that, and other. You can introduce a skill or concept or standard one time. They can grasp it. Then you have those that you can introduce it the first time, but then you have to kind of like tweak it a little bit more for them, and then they have it. And then you have this kid that I can learn this skill, but I need you to give me some small group instruction, and I need you to work on those foundational things that where I may have gaps in my learning. And then I have this one. You can introduce it 20 times, but I'm still struggling. Not saying that I can't get it. So if I am one of those kids that can get it just like that, and if you can give me some that same skill or that same concept at an extended or level where you can where I can work above but still on the same thing, and then I can go out here and do some research on my own, tap into some things of interest for me, maybe give me a format, maybe I can go do something on a research project on this same skill or concept while you're working with this small group over here. Maybe I can go pair these students up, and maybe them working together, they can grasp the skill. Or maybe if I can go have this little cooperative group work, maybe 3 or 4, and they can have this discussion, they can get it. And then I, as a teacher, I can pull these students that are struggling over to the side, give them what they need, because no, we can't leave any kids behind. And it may not be that I'm struggling every day. Maybe this particular skill or this standard is hard for me today or a couple of weeks, but then on something else I'm soaring, but one of my peers might need me. So I think if we give kids equity of learning, give them the time and the tools that they need on their particular level, give them the support, I think, and give them what they need. I think because our whole goal is to get everybody over here at least 1 or 2 years growth by the end. And so I think by differentiating and scaffolding learning, I think we meet all of our kids' needs to the best of our ability. And if you can make a year or 2 growth on a kid at the end of the year, I think you've accomplished a lot with the kids. And then we talk about yes, I'm scaffolding, I'm differentiating, but we bring in that parent component too. If you bring them into the mix, you have to have that ongoing communication, And if you bring it, also share with your administrators, okay, this is what I've done. I've done A, B, C, and D, and this child is still not learning. And we respond, we go into response to intervention with bringing in the counselors and everything, and then we try different interventions with the children in multifaceted ways. I think That's all a part of differentiation. And then if you are dialoguing with your colleagues, say, I've tried this with my students, they're still struggling. And then another coworker says, I've tried this, that, and other, and it was successful. That's all a part of meeting the needs of students. Or you can say, well, I have these kids that are soaring. What are your kids doing? And y'all could kind of like do some kind of community working together and having kids do what they need to do. I think you, by differentiating and scaffolding learning, I think it's going to help. This year, one of the things the whole entire district Fort Worth did was they brought in the outside gifted and talented top 10% teacher to work with kids for like an hour and a half a week. In addition to the teachers that are gifted and talented, and they work on projects. Right. We have so many kids that can think outside the box. Why not scaffold for them? And that gives teachers more time to work with those that are struggling momentarily for a while. So I think differentiation, she had 4 students she started out with, and the 3 of them were mastering what they need, but you just can't leave that one by itself. You can't say, well, they got it, the majority got it. No, you got to give it to every kid because we owe every kid a quality education.
Right. Well, Ms. Lovings, I want to thank you for your time. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. And I just want to say that when I read my books and taking my other classes, I really feel like here at Westcreek, I see our school and all of these things they teach us. It's like, wow, well, that's what we learn in our staff meeting or our grade level meetings. And, I just want to say that you're doing a wonderful job. And, it's just like, wow, okay, well, that's what we do. Or, oh, okay, I've heard this before. So it's just an honor to work with you. And thank you so much for your time. It's an honor to interview you.
Well, I want to say this, Ms. Lockridge. You study these things and you integrate them into your classroom and you share with other teachers through professional learnings. We can no longer keep our learning to ourselves, just like kids can't keep that learning to themselves. These are very good tools, talking about differentiated learning or talking about understanding by design. And I think when we share with our colleagues, we're just not helping our class, we're helping the whole school, and particularly when you, as you have done throughout the year, learn things you've learned from class, and then you did a professional learning on it. I think that helps with all the things you were talking about, sharing the knowledge and the understanding with the kids. Because if you share it with your colleagues, they're going to share it with their kids.
Right.
And so thank you as well.
Thank you.